Hey, family, and welcome to Excellence in Everything Live. I am your host. And on EIE, we talk about all things building confidence, building competence, and competitive advantage for those who will soon lead tomorrow's workforce, which includes teens, young adults, and early careers. All love my piece of in one. Um, and tonight's topic is I like talking about stuff like this. I kind of nerd out on career development topics. It's my area of it's super my niche. And so I want to pose this question to you. Do you remember your first interview? And if you do, what do you wish someone had told you in preparation for that so that you could kill it? What do you wish someone had told you in preparation for it so that you could kill it? I want you to share that in the comments, and then I'll jump in once we get through today's intro. You are excellence. Your mind is of excellence. Your visions are of excellence. Your unique superpower is nothing short of excellence. You amplify a voice of excellence. Your contribution to this world will be of excellence. You will achieve your highest goals and desires with excellence. Excellence in everything, every time. So for those of you who I've never met, my name is Linnita Hosten, and I coach high school students to devise what I call a PPP, a post-graduation productivity plan. And the goal is that we are arming them to transition seamlessly into their careers of choice and the areas in which they desire. And part of that is them getting crystal clear about who they are and what they want. So I'm really passionate about that work. I'm an award-winning author, philanthropist, and edutainer, which I combine education and entertaining and provided educational related topics in an entertaining way. That's my word of an edutainer. And I just have this world vision of people doing what they absolutely love. And so when you meet with me on Tuesdays, we're going to be talking about basically equipping someone to do what they love. And sometimes that means getting past a decision maker or waving a decision maker in your favor because you feel like you're the best person for the job. If you are watching live, I want you to go ahead and let me know. Say, hey, I am here. I see JP is here. We are so excited that you're here watching us live. I know you usually catch the replay. So thank you for joining us. And before we jumped into the introduction, I asked a question. Do you remember your first interview? And if so, what do you wish someone would have shared with you? And JP said, boy, I was sweating. Invisible bullets on my very first interview. I wish I was told to simply show my true personality. Oh man, that is so good. So good. I remember my first interview. I interviewed a lot. I mean, which one? What kind of interviews? I guess my first one would have been when I interviewed for my first job in high school, which was for Starbucks, and I wouldn't count that. I did a lot of interviews in college for student organizations. I did a beauty pageant. I had to interview for that. But my very first professional career-related interview, that one, I'm gonna be honest, I crushed it. And I was the absolute youngest candidate. At the time, I was 22. And later down the line, while I was in that role, my supervisor, who was the VP of communications at the time, came back and told me, she said, out of the 21 applicants that we had, not only were you our first pick, but you were the youngest. You were the only person I knew without a shadow of a doubt could do the job very well. And that's why we selected you. So tonight, when I talk about crushing an interview, I didn't go on Google. I usually don't go on Google for the content. Literally, sometimes it's through experience or study. Things that I study and I want to cross share. But tonight's content, I'm really going to give you from my experience. And I mean this in the most humblest way. I do crush every interview that I do. That's just all I'm going to say. Before I jump into those 5 ways you can crush your interview, I want to share with you. Last month, I was at St. Bonaventure University, and I want to share with you the recap of what it was like to be with their 500 new students, and they vary in ages. Check this out. The most powerful thing that people can do for you is plug you in the room when you're not there. You only get that kind of relationship when you've built it.
My name is Chris Brown. I'm the Executive Director for the Student Success Center at St. Bonaventure. One of the things that we love about what she talks about is helping students build their network, building the people that are going to motivate them, that are going to support them, and are going to be part of their journey, whether they're people from their home or people from here on campus that they continue to meet and build relationships with.
As an upperclassman student, I thought that a lot of the information shared today was really valuable for the freshmen to learn about, especially with the people that surround you, just making sure that they're people that really want to see you win, and also taking breaks when you need it to help refuel your mind, as well as all the other information shared today. I thought it was really helpful.
After reflecting on what I heard today from our speaker, I really thought she hit home on what Bonaventure is really about, our networking community of Bonnies are everywhere. And it really hit me as a junior now at St. Bonaventure, where I can take this experience and keep growing my networking, going into my experiences in the future, getting a job.
I have a lot of shortcomings, but I'll tell you what I don't have is a loss of drive. When I make my mind up to do something, I'm committed to doing it my absolute best, even if I don't feel like it. And that walks me right into what we're going to talk about today in terms of even when you don't feel prepared or ready to do something, you do it anyway. But I did want to share this. If you're looking for ways in which we can work together, these are the 3 ways we can work together. Anytime you're thinking about me, I want you to think about these 3 ways. Obviously, you can bring me in to speak and you see some of my work. A lot of it is also online. You can come in, you can hire me to come in and do some training. If you have a career development program that you would like me to do some sessions on, happy to do so. Or we can partner to write a curriculum if you have an existing career development program at your organization. And if you want more information on how you can do those 3 things, just go ahead over to linnitahosten.com/connect. And happy to serve you. Definitely happy to serve you. Thank you, JP. Thank you, JP said this is so dope. I appreciate that. I'm happy when my clients are happy. And St. Bonaventure, the staff there, they were very, very pleased. And that's all that matters. Hey, Walter, good evening. So glad to have you. You came just on time. Okay, so 5 ways to crush an interview. I already told you, my first one out the gate at 22, I came swinging. So imagine 11 years later, I must have the skill refined. So I want to share those 5 things with you. And I want you to think about which of the areas could you use maybe an increased sense of confidence so that when it's time to go for the interview, you'll be prepared. And I do want to say this. You can't crush an interview that you didn't prepare for. I don't care how good you are. You have to prepare. There is no showing up without doing any study of self, of the organization, obviously. But the biggest thing is really sitting down to do an inventory of your skill set and its relevance to what you're applying for. And it doesn't matter the kind of interview. It could be for sorority or fraternity. It could be for a volunteer role. It could be for executive board seat. It could be for, I don't know, you want to go in for a leadership position at your church, or you want a career change. You have to study you. So that's really the only way you can crush an interview, is that you're so aware of what you're bringing to the table that when you talk about it, it's fluid and it's relevant to the organization. And that just brings me to my first one out of the 5, which is you should be interviewing inside of your wheelhouse. Your wheelhouse is your hot zone. It's your superpower. It's the thing that you do exceptionally well. So if you're really good at working with special need populations and you're interviewing at an organization that supports special needs, because it's your wheelhouse, the level of detail and care that you'll have for that specific population, your creative ways to maybe help them in difficult times or encourage them or spot signs. It's like second nature because it's in your wheelhouse. When I tell you it's difficult to find people who are operating in their wheelhouse and superpower, because most people are chasing the bag. They're looking for a quick way to turn or exchange their time for money. So they are applying for things that would give them a quick return on investment. Well, what I'm saying is, if you really want to crush an interview, and sometimes this might lead to you being able to negotiate your compensation, you can only do that when you're showing up powerfully in your genius. So you got to know what that wheelhouse is. So your wheelhouse it could be a set of characteristics or traits, attributes, a set of soft or hard skills that you do exceptionally well, relevant to the role. And sometimes things that you may share may not be directly relevant, but the skill set is transferable. So I won't say the organization, but about 2 weeks ago, I interviewed with a very, very well-known media company to be a content producer. And if I'm selected for that role, I may be pausing EIE. But one of the things that I shared in that interview process was how being a cheerleading coach taught me how to create community when you have opposition. So I shared with them how I was placed inside of a community that wasn't community-like. So not only were they not enthusiastic about the sport, they weren't trained about the sport, and the community that they were a part of didn't respect the sport. So there was a lot of change. And I just talked about how creating community means building respect and rapport with those who you work with. Like, who would think being a coach could translate into other things? But sometimes those external experiences do help to make you even more refined in the direct skill set that you'll be applying for a role. So don't be afraid to talk about the other things that you do that may seem indirectly related or not relevant, but they have an indirect correlation and they amplify your wheelhouse. And likely if you're doing something on the side or volunteer, something you're passionate about. So extract what skill sets you've grown or refined from those experiences and just make them relevant to what you're interviewing for. Here's the second one. I need you to do your research. This is 2 and 3 wrapped in one. I mentioned this earlier. You have to do the research of self. So what I would typically do is I would write an inventory of every experience that I've had that would relate to this role. Why I am adequately equipped to do this work based on my experience. It really should be on if you submitted a resume. Sometimes you don't have a resume. Sometimes somebody plugged you or somebody's betting on you. You have an interview, the opportunity to interview. But if you submitted a resume, you should have handpicked the opportunities that would make it relevant for your skill set. So going back through all of those opportunities and saying, okay, what did I learn here? What did I do here? What did I get really proficient in doing here? And bringing that to the interview. So you're doing an inventory of your own experience. The reason why that's important is if you have a lot of experience, you forget. There's some things that are not front of mind. Time has passed by, bigger and better has happened, but even those earlier experiences could be relevant to a new opportunity. So you do an inventory of that and be prepared to cherry pick when relevant. So 2 is you do your research on you, but 3 is you obviously also do your research on the organization. And you do this by looking at their annual report, going through their social media channels. If they have any initiatives that they're running, you could do that. I would check out their board members, doing more than just looking at their mission statement. You could do that too. You could also, just depending on how, detailed you wanted to get, for the people who are in the department, you could find that on LinkedIn. You could literally find that on LinkedIn. You could find everybody who's a part of that team on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is such an underutilized career development platform. If you're looking for a decision maker for something, you could really find them on LinkedIn. Sometimes they don't always have their email address, but if you Google their name, the organization, and type in email address, it might come up. So don't be discouraged if you don't know, but doing your research certainly would encompass that. So I mentioned to you the annual report. And the other part of research that I think is valuable is knowing the founder's story. Ain't nobody doing that. Who is studying how it was created? And if you really want to crush an interview, go above and beyond. Why did the person found the organization? Because most people will ask, and this media company asked me this. They asked, tell us what you know about our organization. And I said, well, I know that the founder, and I named him, why he created the organization, what was the area of opportunity, and how it has changed since then. They were very impressed. And I do that all the time. So what's the founder's story, especially if it can resonate with you? That's just something to keep in your pocket. So that's part of your research that I definitely highly recommend that you do. Here's the fourth one. Honesty is such a not normal thing in this process. People show up masked and not their true authentic selves with the hope that they would gain something. I'm saying if you don't know how to do something well, say that. Literally say what you can and what you may have to learn. There's a reverence for honesty. What God has for you is not leaving you. So because you don't know one software doesn't mean you would be ineligible. Or because you don't know how to use one platform, and mind you, they change all the time. And not to mention, most organizations to some degree still have to train you on their use of anything. It's okay if you don't know, but always demonstrate your willingness to learn. You can even talk about maybe you were hired to do something else. You didn't quite know all of the pieces together, but talk about how you were able to make it work. Talk about how maybe you took the initiative to learn and you mastered it. Talk about how maybe you didn't know at the time and now you teach other people on it. But be honest. When I was interning my intern this year, I asked her, what would you like to get out of this internship experience? No. I don't want to show you that. I want to share with you this. I said, what would make this opportunity a win-win for you and I? And she said, I need flexibility. I cannot work from 8 to 4. I'm a mom. I have a full-time job. I loved it. That made me pick her. Because if you could be that honesty and risk not being selected, that means you're not going to bite your tongue. I loved it. So I chose her. I didn't even need to see the rest of the people. Because integrity is such a attribute or characteristics and quality that people are like, they don't have. Like most people are not displaying that. So when you meet somebody who honest and then honest about their areas of opportunity or growth, that's huge. So be honest. If you don't know something or if there's an area that you're not sure of, just say that. Not sure about that. I also experienced in that interview that I mentioned to you that when I was asked about a software that they use to monitor their metrics, I was asked did I know about the software, and I told them I absolutely didn't. And they educated me right there. Right on the spot. It wasn't even no love lost. It was like, okay, well, we're just going to tell you about it. So you never know. Your honesty could be rewarding. So be honest. And here's the last one. You got to have questions to ask. And some good ones. When an interview was ending, a interviewer would typically ask, do you have any questions? And this is your time. This is your time to be a rock star. You come in like, I'm about to give you some real good questions to ask. First one being, okay. Oh, I'm just trying to figure out, okay, I want to take it a little slow because I come with a lot of questions. I want to know, the typical questions are, how quickly are you looking to make a decision? I ask, based off of the time that we spent together, do you have any concerns about my candidacy? Meaning, did I say anything that was alarming that may make me not favorable? I want to know. It's a great way to get live feedback so you don't have to guess in the end why you may not have been selected. You may even say, I always ask, what's the salary range of this role? Like I come in swinging. I want to know because, well, my perspective is a little different because when it comes to these things, they matter to me. I'm not waiting until I want to know now so we could slow up or end this process if it's not a good fit. But you you can ask a salary range. That's not a, like, you want to know so that you can decide if the opportunity is of worth you even being excited to hear back from them about. It also sets the tone for the value that you feel like you bring. And in negotiation, most people will say, and they said this, well, what is your desired salary range? In negotiation, the person will always put it back in your court. And one of the rules of thumb that I've learned is you take your highest number that you have in mind and add 15% on top of that. And when you state that number, you start from that plus 15% and you give them the range of your highest number. Your highest number. You always start there. So you may say, my salary range, let's say you say my salary range is between 125 and 145. Well, you would say 145 to 125. And then they may come back and say, okay, well, this position, we were more so budgeting for about 100,000. Typically, what will typically happen is they'll say, if there is or is not some flexibility, and then they'll ask you, would you be open to negotiation? And then that is when you can talk about other areas, because pay is not the only benefit that you can negotiate in that process. You can negotiate other things, additional time off, some other benefits, stock. What am I trying to say? What are some other things? Travel. You Google it and you will find some other things that you can ask for. But the goal is that you're asking questions that not only demonstrate that you see yourself as a viable candidate, but two, the other kind of questions that you should be asking should be relevant to the role. So you may say, if they describe the role and you have like, there were some gaps in between what they were trying to describe, you may say, you mentioned that the person would be a project manager. Whom would they be managing? Would that be a junior level person, a senior level person? And that, if you're a student and you're interviewing for something, you may say, you mentioned that there are 2 cashiers on site. Is there a supervisor? Who's responsible for closing at the end of the night if I'm coming in at the last shift? So asking the kind of questions that indicate you were listening and very engaged during the interview process. Great questions. Asha says, yes, always ask questions. Ask them. And it's okay. Like, you should have some questions. So those are my 5 tips to crush an interview. I feel like the biggest thing is you have to do your research. You got to sit down and prepare. I would even say at least a few days out, 3 or 4 days, because when you're doing that inventory of your skill set and experience, you may not think of everything in that time period, but as a day passes by, you may think of something else. The other thing is, if you prepare in advance, if you're doing an in-person interview, if you're really good, let me rephrase that. If you really want to make a favorable impression, bring something tangible to support what you've been talking about. That would be a portfolio. It could be examples of work, research, writing samples, photos of your whatever's relevant. If it's a visual role, photos of past work, creations that you've had that are all relevant to them. Most people aren't doing that. The only way to crush something is to be a differentiator, to stand out like very loudly. And I've mentioned this before. When I was at a high school and I was a cheerleading coach, yes, Asha, the interviewer will know the most prepared candidate. I done sat in on some raggedy interviews. I ain't even gonna talk about what I seen people had on. And I try not to be discriminatory in terms of how a person appears, but sometimes to me it translates to a level of effort that people don't have, and that translates to the level of detail that you may not also have. So those little things, I'd be like this. Even my intern showed up in business wear for our virtual interviews, and I appreciated that. But what I was going to say, when I was on the staff at the high school that I used to work at when I was a head cheerleading coach, we were interviewing for an athletic director, and he came in with a portfolio. Like, he had photos of past basketball teams, before and after pictures of when he transformed, their visual look, like their uniform, photos of them winning championships, text messages from parents and his former basketball members. He had certificates, certifications that he took. It was, as you can tell, that was almost 10 years ago. I remember it vividly. I don't remember any other candidate. And when he left the interview, we were all like, our jaws were in amazement. We were like, this man is incredible. He had it was binded. It was protected. It was very nice. I mean, that's a level of effort that is really hard to overlook. So I've always said, and I've shared that story with other people, if you really want to make a favorable impression, bring something tangible for every person who will be a part of your interview process. So make copies of them. Be prepared to leave something with them. That's a sure way to make a favorable impression. I can't say who this is, but someone says, thank you, Linnita. You're absolutely welcome. Okay, so tell me what you learned. What was your biggest takeaway from today? As we prepare to wrap up, what was your biggest takeaway from today? We talked about 5 ways to crush your interview. And it could be an interview for, doesn't matter how small or how big, but how you show up to make a very lasting and memorable impression based on your skill set. Your personality, yeah, but it's your skill set that's going to translate into value for the organization that's looking to partner with you. And let's keep it a buck. Business owners interview every time we prospect a client. Every time you jump on a connect call, happy call, sales call, whatever you call them, you're being interviewed. So it's the same concept, like doing your research on them. It's the same concept, being honest about what you have and what you're developing, and ask them questions. You have to do the same level of preparation. And so I think that there are a lot of similarities in the process of being interviewed or being the interviewee, no matter what stance you're on, if you're on a 9-to-5 stance or in the business world. Yes, preparation. I ain't even going to tell you, I have somebody that I know very closely. They never, ever prepare for an interview. They get interviews all the time, never prepare. And it shows. I'm just going to leave it at that. Yes, interview within your wheelhouse, big takeaway. So looking for things, because the thing about when you're good at something, you the way that you speak about it, unmatched. The way that you come up with innovative things and recite it back, unmatched. It's going to be really hard to find someone who could duplicate not only your level of expertise, but your passion. And even as an employer myself, I have a team of 3 looking for people who are like not only very skilled, but they're interested in what I'm hiring them to do. It's exceptionally hard. So when you are that and you're embodying that, you're going to crush it. And that's on Murray Had a Little Lamb, as the kids would say. All right, family, I'm out of here. Those are your 5 ways to crush a virtual interview. Thank you, Walter, JP, Asha, for hanging out and sharing your feedback from today. I'll see you next Tuesday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. We actually got a guest. We're going to be diving into the career path of pharmacy. Pharmacy 101. She's going to talk about what it's like to be a pharmacist from start to like where she is now. Her name is Dr. Samantha Deloach. She'll be with us next Tuesday. You're absolutely welcome, Asha. You guys have a great night, and I'll see you next week. You are excellence. Your mind is of excellence. Your visions are of excellence. Your unique superpower is